5:18.
Do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit.
Okay, this one says, let me read it really quickly. Little different. And do not be drunk with wine, in which is dissipation. You had debauchery. This one has dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit. Okay, close, but different word. Okay. This verse, unfortunately, has been taken to amazingly absurd extremes by some. For one, poor handling of the issue of drinking. To another, the doctrine of total abstinence from alcohol arises. Neither this verse nor any verse in Scripture can be used to justify that stand. The words begin with, and do not be drunk with wine. Being drunk is something which has happened since the earliest times of man on earth. I hope I have time to finish this. The Bible is full of stories of people drinking to excess. What was probably most on Paul's mind was the custom at the time of the orgies held to Bacchus, the god of wine. In festivals, such as this one, and others as well, one thing led to another, and it is noted that people would go from heavy drinking to running wildly in the streets and committing all kinds of sexual sins. This is why he writes, in which is dissipation. The words refer to be drunk, not with wine. Everybody got that? Dissipation refers to be drunk, not with wine. It is evident that wine itself does not necessarily lead to dissipation, because if it did, then it wouldn't say wine that gladdens the heart of man and all the other countless verses that talk about it as a blessing from the Lord. The Lord's first miracle was to make wine. No, it was not non-alcoholic wine, okay? If you read the context of it, there's no doubt that it was, but people will insert that into there because they can't let it go. And yes, it certainly had alcohol content. The consumption of alcohol is condoned by Paul in 1 Corinthians 22, explicitly condoned. He says, don't you have homes to go eat and drink in? And he's talking about drinking alcoholic beverages, okay? He specifically says, don't do that here. Go home and do it, okay? And Timothy is instructed to drink wine. Obviously, that's medicinal, but some type of stomach medicine in 1:5:23. These and countless other examples show that the drinking of alcohol is not forbidden in Scripture. I typed up a whole thing on it because I got so tired of hearing people come up with their things and say, you know, you can show somebody right from the Scripture. And I actually had somebody post on Facebook one day, I don't care. Drinking wine is wrong. And I thought, I've just showed you in the Bible where it's not wrong. And, you know, but that's what happens when you have a presupposition about something. You are right. The Bible is wrong, and that's all that matters, okay? So, throughout the Bible, there is acceptable drinking, like in the time of the tithes, Deuteronomy 14. Go down to Jerusalem and buy whatever you want, wine, drink, or, you know, Blinko drink. And there is unacceptable drinking. The same is true with acceptable eating and acceptable and unacceptable eating. He says, you know, don't be a glutton, okay? He doesn't say no eating. That would be unreasonable. He just says, don't be a glutton, right? Okay, so, where is it? People can have money, but they are not greedy with money, right? I got money in my pocket. Do I? No, I got money over there. Anyway, just because you have money doesn't mean you're greedy, okay? They're just not to be greedy with money. People are not to engage in illicit sex, but not all sex is illicit. That's right. Reason and a proper use of Scripture clearly shows that drinking is not forbidden in the Bible. But dissipation, which results from drinking, is. One is not to drink to the point of excess. Instead, they are to be filled with the Spirit, Paul says. We got 4 more minutes. As has been seen elsewhere, the term be filled is passive in the Greek, just as be drunk is in the first clause. A person drinks wine, and the wine makes them drunk. A person likewise needs to do something in order to be filled with the Spirit. They need to yield themselves. The believer has all, I've said this a million times, can't say it enough. The believer has all of the Spirit he will ever receive the moment that he calls on Christ. All of it. But the Spirit can get more of the person. On the day of a person's marriage, they are now married, and they will never get more married. But the spouse can get more of the other spouse as one yields to another. The same is true with the Spirit. In order to be so filled, the Christian is to sing praises, pray, worship, fellowship, read the Bible, talk on the things of the Lord, and so on. In doing these things, they are then filled with the Spirit. Paul's heart is that believers would so yield themselves to the Spirit that they would become revelers in God's goodness at all times, not revelers in dissipation, even for a moment. Good, we're done. Life application. Didn't want to rush through that, but we're almost done, almost out of time. The Bible needs to be handled carefully and without regard to presuppositions or biases. We are not to insert our desires, pet peeves, or insecurities into our interpretation of Scripture. Instead, we are to accept that there are things we may or may not indulge in which are permitted by the Bible. If we do not participate in them, whether drinking of alcohol, eating of certain foods, or whatever else, we are not to impose our weakness in that area on others.